The Oilers situation, I just want to again take us back to the tragedy in Humboldt. In my old career with Hockey Canada, dealing with junior hockey players and minor hockey across the country, the outcry and support in Canada has been unbelievable, but across the world. And it is in our DNA as Canadians. And when you look at the families that have been affected here, their young boys were part of hockey. The bus rides is what the game is all about. Our thoughts and prayers are with them from OEG, from all our players and staff. And I think you saw the press release. We will be holding a service here on Tuesday at 1 o'clock. And we invite all of the public here to go into this service. So again, to all the families, our thoughts and prayers are with you. In regards to the Oilers, I know there's been a lot of different comments being made. We are in an evaluation process. I'm here today to tell you that the President and General Manager of the Edmonton Oilers, Peter Chiarelli, will be the General Manager next year. We are going through the process with not just the coaches, but with everyone within the hockey operations and within the OEG staff. Peter, when I look at that, I really believe in his plan. Over the last number of years, or last number of months, we've been meeting with a lot of our season ticket holders. There's been anger and disappointment of where we ended up, and we certainly understand where they are, and we will have a plan coming out here in the near future of how we're going forward. Any questions?
Is Paul Coffey coming back to the Oilers next year?
Jim, that's part of the evaluation that we're looking at right now of all those pieces. All the coaching staff, all of that's under review, and we'll have something in the near future.
But Paul wasn't around a whole lot this year because of the family commitment. So what was the reasoning bringing him in halfway through the year, and then he wasn't really around the team all that often?
Yeah, I'm not going to get too deep into that, but we really thought that it was important for Paul has a great resource. We knew we wouldn't be able to use it a lot because he was coaching his son, and I think Paul contributed, and we'll evaluate where that'll go going forward.
Bob, just to clarify, Peter comes back as president and GM next season?
Yes, both president and general manager.
And secondly, obviously there were tough times this season. And during those tough times, the Tampa Bay model came up in discussions. Is that maybe something that you guys look at moving forward, where you want to stay the course as opposed to maybe taking a different direction with things?
I think we want to do an evaluation and make the decisions that we feel are right. And, we're going to make sure that we take the appropriate time to make those decisions, and that's what's going on right now.
Bob, you were definitive that Peter Chiarelli's returning. When it comes to specifically Todd McLellan, are you prepared to make that commitment about him as the head coach, or are he and his three assistants all up in the air?
Yeah, it's all being evaluated at this time. Today I'm just making an announcement that Peter is here and leading that process.
And can I ask what makes you confident in Peter after a difficult year that he should stick around?
Yeah, once I came in here 3 years ago as the CEO, I hired Peter Chiarelli. I've seen his plans of what he's done. A lot of it you don't see what he's done with the scouting component of this organization. And yes, we had a down year, but I really believe when I talked to Peter, he has a plan to get us back in the playoffs next year, and we'll unveil that plan once we go through this evaluation.
Is the playoffs, is it make or bust then for Peter Chiarelli at this point? If he doesn't make it next year, did you see him sticking around? Because I don't think the plan of missing 3 out of 4 years could have been the proper plan.
Our goal is to make the playoffs next year.
Bob, if you can, I know you speak on behalf of upper management, but also the owner. Can you maybe just take us through the sentiment expressed to you by Daryl Cates, the owner of this team, who we don't necessarily get to talk to, but where his head is at after the disappointment that this season was, and you know, how he feels about all of this, because I know you in some ways speak for him too.
Yeah, you know what? It's probably no different than everyone in this room and the fans. There's big disappointment. You know, last year was pretty exciting for the first time under his ownership that we made the playoffs. He's disappointed, angered, and wants us to get it right. And certainly in my discussions, he's waiting to hear the recommendations that I'll make after the discussion with Peter.
Bob, in the past, you've referred to this organization as having, putting words in your mouth, but as I understand it, far too many turnovers in coaching staffs. What part will you play in the decision? And having already expressed that view, where do you sit on the potential of apparently replacing a coach?
Yeah, you know what, Jonesy, it's a good question, and you always want to make sure that you look into the past, but you know, our really focuses on the future of where we're going to go. We all know what's happened over the last number of years here. I'm certainly going to listen to Peter, and then my job is to listen to that and then take that to the ownership and Daryl Cates.
Bob, as a hockey man, though, let's take a look at where the game is today. And the fact that, and I'm not trying to make excuses here, but it may not be the easiest thing to get this club back into the playoffs with any kind of assurance to the fan, because half of the teams that are in the playoffs now weren't there last year. And clubs that were very good missed the playoffs, and teams that were last, like Colorado, were in the playoffs. So I'm asking you from standpoint as a hockey guy, looking at the league itself and what's taken place. Doesn't that have a really big effect on what's happening here too?
You know what, Gary Bettman loves the league the way it is today because it is so competitive. But this league and this organization is evaluated on wins and loss, and our job's to get back into the playoffs. Yes, it's very tough. You heard Peter the other day talking about our roster and players that underachieved. We have to really evaluate that. We have very, very good pieces. We just have to make sure that we evaluate all of those pieces and make sure that we put the right pieces in place to get into that playoffs, which is very difficult. But we have one goal, and that's to make sure that we're back in there.
Bob, Peter Chiarelli has made some moves that maybe the return hasn't been as good as hoped. I guess my question is, does he still have total autonomy in making those moves, or does he have to go through you now? Is it a process, or does he still have?
Yeah, in all of that, you know, so Peter leads the hockey operation side. We talk on that all the time, and I do the majority of the communication to ownership. But Peter Chiarelli, we have other people around us that give him input, but it's Peter Chiarelli's job to do that.
Hi, Bob. Sorry, just to the back left here. Can you maybe just describe a little bit of your working relationship and maybe off-ice sort of rapport with Todd, and what you have liked about what he's been able to do? And I'm not sure if you want to take it further as to maybe what you don't like, but just the kind of guy that you've been able to get to know.
You know what, I'm not going to go too deep into that, but you know, I think Todd McLellan's past speaks for itself. He was up for Coach of the Year. Todd is a person that really uses all his assets, uses his assistant coaches, and in the competitive environment that we're in the National Hockey League, I think you have to make sure that you use all those resources. We're going to certainly evaluate those, have those discussions on all the resources that are there, and how do you put all that together to go forward in a positive manner.
Bob, one of the things that happened this year is you finished the season out of the playoffs, and that was below expectations, but you did so with a lot of space on the salary cap. Was that a misstep? Because I know that Daryl Cates is committed to spending whatever he needs to spend, yet you missed the playoffs this year, and the appearance with that cap space is more could have been done.
You know what, certainly it's a question there. We know what Connor McDavid's salary is going to be next year, so we anything that we do, we're looking at a 1 and 2 and 3 year plan. So that's why the cap was where it was this year for our organization.
Just for the sake of clarity, when it comes to the coach and the coaching staff, Do you have any indication of whether Todd considers his staff a part of his package, or whether it's possible to keep Todd and maybe release some of the assistant coaches? Just straighten that out for us.
Yeah, I don't really want to get into that. That's part of the evaluation process that we're going through.
Bob, when you look at, you mentioned there's underachieving for certain players, and I think that's fair. I think it'd probably be safe to say there was underachieving then for management and coaches at the same time. So when you talk about Peter's plan, what is it that excites you moving forward that you believe success will come?
I really believe that Peter really thinks through everything that he does. I really believe that he understands where our gaps were this year. And making those changes aren't easy, as you all know in this room. So we have to make sure that we have a number of different situations to move forward. And Peter Chiarelli's got a very good relationship with other general managers in this league to make those trades or exchanges easier than someone that doesn't have those great relationships.
Could I go back to the cap for just a minute? This year, Connor McDavid's big deal kicks in, right? Are you foreseeing any problem being able to handle things as they are when the cap is going to be much different?
Yeah, we haven't gone into great depth on that, but we feel when we've looked at that we will be a cap team. We're very close to the cap team, and we'll be able to make some movement to strengthen this team.
Bob, sorry, just back left here. Regarding the evaluation period, do you have an idea yet on sort of your own timeline of working through this and then making the decisions you have to make or you want to make?
Yeah, I think from my own personal side of it, I'm not a person that's going to rush it. We'll announce it when we're ready and do all our homework. So I'm not going to put a timeline to that. But certainly we're on it now, and when we're ready to make those decisions, we'll announce those to everybody.
Bob, just up front here. So this evaluation period, then it's just all Peter, or are you involved in part of this too?
It's led by Peter Chiarelli.
Okay, and what about your input in part of
I have all of my input with Peter Chiarelli, as we have other people in that situation. And we have two vice chairs, Wayne and Kevin, and there's lots of things out there. It's Peter's call. He will use those assets as needed.
Now, Bob, that's obviously Peter's involved of the on-ice hockey stuff. You were involved in everything in OEG. I have a lot of people at times who talk about wanting to enhance the fan experience at the game, not just what happens on the ice. There been talk in the organization to, when you look at, and I know Vegas is very unique because of what they have in that market, but making the game day experience better for the fans who dole out big dime dollars.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time. And, I think the fans in Edmonton are different than in Vegas. Although when you talk about the Vegas experience, we had 6,000 or 7,000 fans down there. But that's part of it all the time. I think when you look at a Canadian fan compared to a U.S. fan, they're different. You saw what happened in Winnipeg last night. You saw what happened when we were in the playoffs here. It changes at certain times, but that's something we talk about within the organization.
But is there a way then to build that so it isn't just the playoffs where you can enhance it? Because I hear a lot of fans complain that they're told to sit down and not cheer at certain Oilers games at certain times.
Yeah, that certainly isn't something that we encourage. We want to try to, we bring in Cameron to get the fans out of their seats. We're looking at different ways to make sure they get up and cheer.
Bob, coaches are evaluated on wins and losses. How do you evaluate a general manager? Because obviously Peter did a good job last year, did not do a good job this year if you're out of the playoffs. So how do you evaluate a general manager who obviously is a general manager of a team that is closer to the bottom than a playoff spot?
Excellent question. Starts with wins and losses, but it also starts with what you're doing with your scouting group, how you are handling the scouts and how you're handling your development. And in all of that, Peter's done a very good job of how he's organized that. I feel our information that we're getting going into this year's draft, and what we're doing on the development side is very good. So it starts with wins and losses, but those other pieces are very important, because a general manager's job is to make the organization strong longer term. A coach's job is to have that team successful shorter term. Thanks, guys. Thank you.